Why is it that some people can rebuild an engine on a Saturday afternoon like it's nothing, and the rest of us can't even figure out why the check engine light is on? The answer has nothing to do with talent. It has everything to do with psychology. And I don't mean that loosely. I mean there are specific, documented psychological traits, cognitive patterns, and neurological tendencies that separate the person who pops a hood and knows from the person who stares into that same hood like it's written in a foreign language. Once you understand what's actually going on inside those minds, you'll never look at a car person the same way again, and you might just understand yourself a little differently too. Let's start with something most people never consider: the way car people think, not just what they know. There's a cognitive ability called spatial reasoning. It's your brain's capacity to mentally rotate, visualize, and manipulate three-dimensional objects in your head, to hold a complex system as a kind of living map and navigate it without ever touching it. And people who are naturally drawn to working on cars tend to have highly developed spatial intelligence. When a mechanic looks at an engine, they're not just seeing metal and wires, they're seeing a system, every part connected to every other part, cause leading to effect, pressure flowing through pathways their brain has already memorized. It's like how a chess grandmaster doesn't see individual pieces. They see the whole board as one living, breathing pattern. Now here's what's crucial, and this is the part people always get wrong. Spatial reasoning isn't fixed at birth. It's a muscle, and every hour someone spends taking apart an engine, diagnosing a transmission, or tracing an electrical fault is an hour their brain is getting stronger at this specific kind of thinking. So when someone walks up to your broken down car and figures out the problem in seconds, what you're actually witnessing is the compounded result of thousands of hours of mental training. It looks like instinct. It is actually mastery. But the cognitive piece is only half the story, because the deeper question isn't just how car people think, it's why they keep coming back to it. Why does someone spend their entire weekend covered in grease, voluntarily, when they could be doing literally anything else? That's where psychology gets really interesting. Researchers Edward Deci and Richard Ryan developed what they called self-determination theory, essentially a framework for understanding what makes human beings feel genuinely motivated and alive. At the center of it are three core needs: autonomy, connection, and competence. And working on cars for the right person satisfies all three in a way that's almost uniquely powerful. But especially competence, that deep primal need to feel effective in the world, to take something broken and make it whole, to understand something complicated and solve it. Here's what makes cars so perfect for this. The feedback is immediate, brutally, beautifully immediate. Either the engine starts or it doesn't. Either the brakes work or they don't. There is no vague middle ground, no let's circle back on this, no waiting 3 weeks for results. You did the work, the machine tells you the truth, right now. For a certain type of mind, that honest, instant feedback loop is almost addictive because it delivers exactly what the brain craves: clear evidence that your effort mattered. This is also why so many people describe working on cars as meditative. And that word gets thrown around a lot, so let me be specific about what's actually happening. Hungarian psychologist Mihály Csikszentmihalyi spent his career studying a mental state he called flow, that rare condition where you are so completely absorbed in a challenging task that time disappears, your internal noise goes quiet, and you feel a kind of effortless clarity. Flow happens when the difficulty of a task is perfectly matched to your level of skill. Not too easy, not overwhelming, just right at your edge. And for someone who has grown into car work gradually, who has built their skills up over years, working on an engine hits that sweet spot over and over again. The problem is real, the skill is real, the focus is total. And in that space, the brain is genuinely at peace. Think about what that means in a modern context. We live in a world of constant abstraction. Most of us spend our days producing things you can't touch: emails, reports, presentations, data. You can work genuinely hard and still feel at the end of the day like you haven't actually made anything. Philosopher Matthew Crawford wrote an entire book about this, Shop Class as Soulcraft,
arguing that working with your hands isn't a lesser form of intelligence, it's one of the most cognitively rich and emotionally fulfilling things a human being can do. And I think people who love working on cars feel that truth in their bones, even if they've never heard it put that way. When you rebuild something with your hands and it roars back to life, that feeling is ancient. It's your nervous system registering something deeply real. I intervened in the physical world and I won.
Now let's talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention: the relationship between car culture and identity. For a lot of people, working on cars isn't just a skill or a hobby, it's a language. It's how they express who they are, where they come from, what they value. You see this across cultures and generations: the lowrider traditions of East Los Angeles, the muscle car heritage of the American South, the obsessive precision of the Japanese tuner scene. In each of these worlds, working on a car is an act of storytelling. It's self-expression with a wrench instead of a pen. And psychologically, this is enormously significant. When an activity becomes part of your identity, not just something you do, but something you are, the motivation to keep doing it becomes almost self-sustaining. Social psychologist Wendy Wood's research on habits shows that behaviors tied to identity are far more durable than those driven by external rewards or willpower. The person who calls himself a gearhead doesn't need to convince himself to spend Saturday in the garage. It would feel stranger not to. The car isn't just a car, it's a mirror. And one more thing, because I think this reframes something people misunderstand about this whole personality type. We tend to picture car people through a certain lens: quiet, practical, maybe not the most emotionally verbose. But the psychology tells a richer story. People deeply drawn to mechanical work tend to score high on conscientiousness, discipline, precision, follow-through, and almost stubborn commitment to doing things right. They tend to have a deep, domain-specific curiosity that is genuinely intellectual, even if it doesn't look like what we typically call intellectual. And many of them express care in the way they work: patient, focused, attentive to detail, in ways that mirror exactly how they show up for the people they love. The car is not separate from the person. It never was. So next time you see someone on their back under a vehicle on a Sunday morning, grease on their knuckles, completely in their own world, don't just see a hobby. See a person who has found one of the most psychologically complete pursuits a human being can engage in. A pursuit that rewards patience, punishes shortcuts, demands full presence, and gives back something that's genuinely hard to find anywhere else: the feeling that you understood something complicated and you fixed it. That's not a small thing. That's actually kind of everything. If this made you think about yourself differently, about what your hands are drawn to, about what puts you in flow, about what makes you feel most like you, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more psychology hiding in everyday places, you know where to find it.